I'm Cole Haddon, and this is 5 a.m. Real Talk, a 5 a.m. StoryTalk plog. Welcome back, Story Talkers. Are you ready for some more 5 a.m. Real Talk? What's new with you guys? At the moment, I'm in it, like really in it, with the TV pilot I've been telling you about. What I mean is, I'm just in that zone that I don't want to step away from it for too long. So, this week's episode is going to be a shorter one, I think. In a moment, I'll tell you what I thought of Sinners, which I finally got to see, and muse about Alan Moore and what artists and magicians have in common. But first, a ramble of sorts about screenplay form, which has been on my mind a lot as I work on this pilot. I've been struggling with form, or rather experimenting with it, for about half a decade now. That probably started right around the time that I wrote my first novel, Psalms for the End of the World, which you can learn more about in the show notes. Shameless plug, sorry. Psalms was my first time writing prose in more than a decade. Screenwriting had more or less taken over my life, and so I returned to the literary form after a long break, and blam, it immediately revealed how much I hated the blunt force trauma inflicted by most Hollywood screenplays. They're too often not enjoyable reads as pieces of, say, literature, slug lines that inadvertently interrupt action, the aversion to directing on the page, economical descriptions that a third grader could follow. Now, one reason for this is how dialogue is too often favored over everything else these days, which is slightly problematic when you consider cinema is a visual medium and dialogue often isn't necessary to scenes. I fall into the Denis Villeneuve camp here, believing TV's reliance on it has infected feature screenwriting in the 21st century. A lot of screenwriters would tell me I'm wrong to even suggest scripts can or should be literary, that they're not works of art in and of themselves. For example, during one of my artist on artist conversations at the 5 a.m. Story Talk newsletter, the White Queen creator Emma Frost and I debated this. She's very much in the camp that a script is ephemeral, nothing more than a blueprint to produce a film or a TV episode, at which point they lose all value. Maybe she's right. But as I told her, such a suggestion is panic-inducing for me. That's because I want reading my scripts to be an experience too. I want to simulate in the imagination what it's like to watch my story on a screen. I want the reader to feel the shots, the cuts, the juxtapositions, and so on, even if, they're not explicitly stated. Finding the way to do that is the art for me. If I've learned to do it well, and who knows if I have, it's been by studying produced screenplays by writers I admire, but also I think studying visual poets. That requires an explanation, I'm sure. Cinema is a visual medium, as I said, with rhythms and tempos and the capacity to slam two images against each other to create new meaning, not dissimilar from poetry. In fact, I've called many of my screenplays, especially my features, tone poems as much as scripts. Consider the films of Terrence Malick, Andrei Tarkovsky, Jean-Luc Godard, Sofia Coppola, Spike Jonze, Charlie Kaufman. These are filmmakers who create feeling, who tell stories with images. So how do you do that on the page? How do you overcome the limitations of the medium as traditionally defined by Hollywood, so to say, to create a fluid, even dreamlike reading experience that moves invisibly like frames on our screens? I don't have all the answers to that because I'm still experimenting, always trying to find a way to create an uninterrupted reading experience. Slug lines, for example, are the bane of my existence. But I feel I'm closer than I've ever been, at least in finding an approach that meets my ambitions for the form. In that regard, I think something interesting, maybe even exciting, is happening on the pages of this pilot script I'm writing. It's moving in this incredibly dynamic way, a kind of language stream that mimics, I hope, the experience of watching images on screen. But hey, maybe my producers will disagree. They might also prefer something more traditional. That's a problem I've run into in the past, and I won't be able to argue with that either, because what I'm talking about here is very subjective. But right now, at this point in the development of this show, I have the freedom to try something, to push the form, to maybe produce a reading experience that transforms the story in some way. So I'm going to go for it, and we'll see what happens. If you're interested in some of the screenwriters and even lyricists who have helped me probe the possibilities of screenwriting, it's an incomplete list, but I'll include them in the show notes. We'll start with my friend Walter Hill, especially his script for The Driver, William Goldman's Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, but really anything he's written, Nick Cave's song lyrics, but also his script for The Proposition, Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer script, which I have a lot of thoughts about. Look for that article in the show notes. Celine Song script for Past Lives, J.C. Chandor's All Is Lost script, which is only 31 pages long, but brilliant. David Bowie's Diamond Dogs, perfect album, written in a cut-up style he borrowed from William S. Burroughs. Paul Schrader's Taxi Driver script, Terrence Malick's The Tree of Life script, one of my favorite films. Richard Linklater and Kim Krizan's script for Before Sunrise, which is also one of my favorite films of all time. And lastly, Synecdoche, New York by Charlie Kaufman, an underappreciated film, maybe even Kaufman's best as either screenwriter or director. Now, I'm not saying these scripts and lyricists are the answer, but for me, they provided me new ways to look at language and its possibilities to convey the cinematic, a visual but also emotional experience. Again, I'll drop links to all these in the show notes. In other news, I've been so busy juggling work and family, I haven't seen as many films lately as I normally might, but I did finally get to check out Sinners from writer-director Ryan Coogler. Listen, don't judge me for how long this took. I live 48 minutes from the nearest movie theater here in Australia, and we own one car because I find more than one useless 99% of the time. As hard as I tried, I couldn't find the 5 hours necessary to go check out this brilliant, brilliant film. Coogler, wherever you are, I bow down to you, brother. Come on my podcast. I'd love to talk to you about this film and your other amazing work. Now, if you're an idiot like me and you haven't seen Sinners yet, find a way, please, just like right now. It's that good, really. As a filmmaker who plays around with the fluidity of time himself, especially as a way to existentially experience what we call reality, there's this midpoint twist of sorts that will probably melt your brain like it did mine. Okay, I think that's it for this week. I have to get back to that pilot script now. If you have any questions about what I discussed today, drop them into the comments on this article at the 5 a.m. StoryTalk newsletter, which is hosted at Substack, or the 5 a.m. StoryTalk podcast account on Instagram. If you enjoyed this ep of Real Talk, be sure to subscribe to 5 a.m. StoryTalk if you haven't already too. Paid subscriptions are available, which get you all kinds of bonus content. Check the show notes for more on that. As for the next episode of 5 a.m. Real Talk, it's coming your way in 2 weeks, just a couple of days before Thanksgiving. Later this week, 5 a.m. Story Talk will return with a minisode that takes a look at the catastrophic effect the screenwriting how-to guide Save the Cat has had on screenwriting and feature films in particular in the 21st century. I'm going to tell you why you shouldn't save the cat, but you should put the cat in the blender instead. Don't worry, that'll make sense after you listen. I'm going to leave you now with a quote. This quote is from legendary comic book writer and curmudgeon Alan Moore, the creator of Watchmen, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I believe that magic is art, and that art, whether it be writing, music, sculpture, or any other form, is literally magic. Art is, like magic, the science of manipulating symbols, words, or images to achieve changes in consciousness. All right, so it's me again. To me, this is what a script has the potential to be, despite how some see them as merely blueprints. The art, again, for me, is in manipulating words on the page that transform into images in the reader's imagination and consciousness. All art does the same, but writing is my specific craft, so I'll just beat that drum a breath or two more. Scripts can't just be for other people to bring to life. You're the magician, not the spell weaver for someone else's magical act. And after the film or TV episode is produced, if you're so lucky, I think it's worthwhile to hope someone can return to your work and have an entirely, different experience than the one they had watching it. I mean, just consider how many screenplays I've cited in this episode alone. Those are all works of art, not blueprints in my mind. We've been talking about many of them for decades, some, just a few years. But all of them will continue to be read, studied, and enjoyed as singular artworks, distinct from the films that were produced from them for many, many more years to come, or at least until AI wipes us out, right? Well, that's it for now. See you around, Story Talkers.